Hello, I wanted to talk a few minutes about the classified balance sheet. Okay, so the classified balance sheet, it's basically building on the balance sheet that you saw in the earlier chapters. In the earlier chapters, it was basically just a listing of assets, equal liabilities, plus equity. Now, it's still doing that same thing, as you can see here, but it's adding new like classifications of assets and liabilities basically to the statement. Basically, this is to help the users and to give users more information. So, like as you can see here, basically the heading would still be the same. Remember that the balance sheet is basically looking at the accounting equation and it's still in balance. It shows your asset, it checks to see if your assets equal your liabilities plus equity of a company. Um, Remember that the balance sheet is as of a moment in time. So it's always set as of one day. So as of this time, do our assets, liabilities, and equity equal? Are our assets equal to our liabilities and equity? So it's dividing out into some different classifications. So you have current assets. Current assets are any assets that you're going to use up or turn into cash within the next year. So some typical current assets I've shown here: cash, accounts receivable, merchandise inventory, and supplies. These are some typical current assets that you have seen in the course. Now, also we have plant assets, and plant assets are long-term assets that a company intends to keep for longer than a year. They tend to be higher dollar value items. Like you can see here, equipment, building, land, trucks, furniture, things like that that a business owns will be considered plant assets. Now, you also might have a section in here for long-term investments, which would be stock that's purchased in other companies. That also could be shown here as well. Stock or debt purchased in other companies. Talk about that a little later in the course. Now, intangible assets, these are assets that do not have physical presence but have value. So examples of intangible assets would be like a patent, like here, which is a patent to a certain process or invention. Also like licensing agreements, franchises, copyrights to music or film, or trademarks, which would be, a company symbol like the Nike swoosh or the NFL symbol for all their teams or the NCAA symbols for different teams. All these would be considered intangible assets. So we add it down and we come up with our total assets, which would be the total of all of these groups. Now, on the liability side, they're dividing out the liabilities basically into two groups. Current liabilities would be any liabilities that you intend to pay off in the next year. So the most common one you're going to see is accounts payable, which is, of course, what you owe suppliers in the ordinary course of business. Now, salaries payable, interest payable, some of the payable accounts, when you look at your adjusting entries, would also be shown here. And you have total current liabilities. And then long-term liabilities. Long-term liabilities are any debts that are over a year in length, that are going to be outstanding over a year. Notes payable, mortgage payable, bonds payable, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later, all would kind of be classified here. And so your total liabilities would be your total long-term liabilities and your total current liabilities. Now, equity remains the same. Equity is still going to be common stock and retained earnings. So equity basically remains the same. And again, the goal of the balance sheet is to make sure your total assets equals your total liabilities and equity. And you can see here it does, which is a very good thing. You want your balance sheet to be in balance. Very important. Just wanted to talk about that for a few moments. Thank you and have a great day.